everybody. Thanks for coming out on this lovely Thursday night. Not as wonderful a weather as we've had in the past, but we'll definitely take it. A few things before we get started here, and as you're getting settled, I'm going to kindly ask you to put your cell phones either turned off or onto a buzzer mode. It'll help you enjoy the talk this evening and not being interrupted. As well as, just for your reference point, if restrooms are needed, they're in the back of the facility or towards the exit. My name is Jeffrey Spratt. I'm a musculotherapist with Santi Holistic Healing. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to tonight's talk by Dr. Mark Mincolla. Very excited to have you all with us. We're going to take a few minutes here just to kind of introduce things to you as well as get you settled. I'd like to first introduce our office, Santi Holistic Healing. We are the main office sponsoring this talk tonight. And those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a group of very dedicated practitioners with our main goal of helping you find your homeopathic and natural road to well-being. One of the things that I was thinking about tonight on the way to describe our office is the words of support and compassion. I believe our practitioners care about everybody. They have your best interest in mind, as well as how we approach our treatment sessions. We realize that everybody is an individual, have different issues and so forth. So we do take the time to listen to where you're at that moment and take our wealth of knowledge and tools and create a treatment plan that's going to meet your particular needs and then move you closer and closer to those final goals. But as everything else, we need help with all that. Wellness has to do with a big piece of the puzzle. We are part of that, and we have several vendors with us this evening that help add to those to that piece of the puzzle. On both sides of the room here, around the corner here, we have David and All the Best Natural Foods. Now, David will have tonight the teas and foods that Mark will be talking about, so if you're interested in any of that, you can see David. On the other end of the spectrum there is Good Health Foods, and they will be having all the supplements that Mark will talk about tonight. So again, if you have any interest with that, you can talk with them at our break. And we have Kagan Water Systems here, which are providing alkaline water. Mark will mention that as well. It's good for good health, keeping our pH level in line. We also have Fitness Together. We have Bill here, Fitness Together, a personal training group, as well as Core Studio 291. We have Mary Delmonico here. Their shop is Pilates. Their tables are back over here, so good group of people to talk with. As well as Global Vision. Pat's here from Global Vision tonight. As well as, to round it off, our office is here, and for purchase we have the music that you've been listening to. Mark's put together a lot of great meditation music, as well as the meditation itself. So that's on CD and for purchase over on there. We do have a raffle, several raffles this evening. So if you haven't had a chance to purchase your tickets, you may do so at the break. And I left the list over there. So I'm not quite sure exactly what we have, but I know that we have sessions with Mark. We have sessions with Sanchez Oman. We have a massage from myself as well. And I'll have that list for you at the break. And going through my notes here, I want to make a few other announcements. Mark has switched radio stations and is now, you can hear Mark on 96.9 FM, WTKK, and that is Sunday evenings. The show is Natural Health Show with Dr. Mark Mincolla, and it's Sunday at 5 p.m. Is that correct? Great. So that was about the only important note. So to continue with the lecture tonight, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our special guest. Her name is Suzanne Landry. She's one of our colleagues here at Santi Holistic Healing. Suzanne has worked quite a bit with as a consultant for Dana-Farber, as well as she was responsible for a lot of the protocols and programs at MGH Cancer Center. And at this time, I'd like to invite Suzanne to come up and share a little bit about her journey with Mark. Suzanne.
I was asked to minutes ago to say a few words about my journey with Mark. And I first met Mark actually as a patient. I have Graves' disease and came to see him, and when I first met him, he did my food testing, and at the time I was in my master's program for nutrition. And I remember getting this very strict diet, leaving the parking lot. I don't know if you remember this. I went out to the parking lot and I had like rice and vegetables and a few fruits that I could eat, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, I didn't ask him about wine, crazy maki sushi rolls, or Parmesan cheese. So I went flying upstairs. You were in your office bringing a client in, and I was like, hold on a minute. So I'm like, Parmesan cheese! Trying to hold my arm up as hard as I could. And of course it was like 1 teaspoon a week. Wine was like 6 ounces a week, and I thought, oh, okay, I can live with that. So anyway, after I saw what kind of progress I made, I started referring clients of mine at Mass General to see Mark. And people that were struggling with cancer, I saw what difference he made in their lives and how people recovered much better, their immune systems were better, they went through treatment better. And although when you're in alternative care, you don't tend to have the money to study, alternative medicine and what an impact it has. But I've seen firsthand now as a practitioner working by Mark's side that the work that he does and the work he's taught me makes a huge difference in people's lives. Mark was kind enough to train me and believe in me and teach me his method of healing. And we consulted together at Acushnet company, Titleist. And what I thought was magical about that experience was people that were in the manufacturing industry without a lot of education in some cases were completely inspired by Dr. Mark. So they would come to me and say, oh my God, I have one word, and all I do when somebody's ticking me off is think about that word, and it's made such a big difference. And people's blood pressure was going down. We started to study his impact on cholesterol and blood pressure and heart disease. And it was the numbers were coming down, but the biggest difference he had was people knew that there was somebody there that really cared about them. And now, working by his side as a practitioner, it makes me tear up because I wish I had found Mark when my dad was dying of cancer. At the time, I had no background in nutrition, and I was trying to stick shark cartilage into shakes and random things. And I remember one day he was like, after months, get this stuff away from me, because I was trying to do what Mark does with his clients. And now, as a practitioner, I wish, Mark, you had been there for my dad. And then my mother had cancer, and you're here for her now. And you've had such an impact on me because I was so scared that I was going to have cancer too. And by working with Mark, I realized that cancer's not so scary. It's just one other thing, just like irritable bowel. He has a way of treating that too. So, Mark, I want to thank you as my friend. I want to thank you for being an inspiration, and I want to thank you for saving so many people's lives. It makes a difference to my life and to so many. So, thank you.
I'd have everybody stand up just for a minute. All right, what we're going to do is just a little bit of setting the tone energetically here, so just leave a little bit of room between you and the person next to you. All right, let's just slowly bring our arms forward, like so, and then bring them down. You want to keep them relatively extended, very gently. And in your mind, you want to think about the energy of nature. Perfect. I want you to think about ocean waves. I want you to think about the way the trees yield to the blowing wind. I want you to think about drifting snow and all the beauty that you're a part of. And I want you to let all that beautiful natural energy in your mind into every cell in your body. with your intentions, know that you're weaving peace. From within the center of your heart, you're receiving the peace that you're weaving. Within the center of your mind, you're projecting the beautiful peace to your heart as your mind and your heart speak to each other through your hands. Separateness is an illusion. We're all part of one energy, and everything around us is all unified with us. There is nothing separate. And with this simple motion of your hands, you're affirming the integration of all living things. Let's do one more. Let's now all unify in our minds as if we are just one human being. Thank you so much. I always like to set the tone with energy. I always think from an energetic place. I don't think from a material place. I used to think from a material place, and I don't know how to do that anymore. So I just made some notes this afternoon, and like Suzanne said, asked her 2 minutes ago to do this because it just occurred to me 2 minutes ago. Because that's how energy works. It doesn't make plans. So these notes came from spontaneity. They came from spirit. So I'm going to share them. I'm going to start reading just a few things, and then I'm going to discuss. The universe is made up of both energy. Energy is undeniable force. We cannot grasp with our senses. Energy like joy. And matter. Forces we can grasp with our senses, like the smile that comes from joy. Einstein established that energy, like joy, and matter, like the smile, are interconvertible and transferable. That is, they are one and the same. This is true for all things great and small. It is true for all things great and small. And if it is true for all things great and small, isn't it true for disease? If we understand the material manifestation of disease to be an intestinal tumor, then what is the energy that first generated that intestinal tumor? If the materially visible smile came from an energy called joy, what energy did the tumor come from? What is the unseen energy associated with material manifestation of an intestinal tumor? Moreover, where does that disease come from? Everything, including disease, sequences through an 8-point energy to matter hierarchy. That is, everything materializes from particles to atoms to molecules to DNA to cells to tissues to organs and finally to organisms like us. So disease originates from the unseen world of energy and it evolves into the material world of organisms just like you and I. If we are ever to truly excel at thwarting disease, we must first make a commitment to preventing it. Intervention is a myth. Intervention is a myth because it goes against the perfect universal holism that creates disease in the first place. Yes, I said the universe creates disease. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that the universe is not benevolent. Heaven and earth are not benevolent. Universal law is a priori, or if-then. If you eat too much fast food, then you'll become unhealthy. Modern medical intervention, on the other hand, says, if you eat too much fast food and get too unhealthy, simply pop a pill to counteract your unhealthy diet. But because you are violating natural universal law, the pill you take will likely have side effects that you will then have to be forced to deal with in other ways. Eventually, the blood pressure pill that your doctor prescribed for you designed to counteract your fast food habit, may lower your blood pressure, but it may also lower your responsiveness to the point where you lose your desire for passion. In order to thwart disease with any degree of efficiency, you must play by the rules of the natural universe. We must seek to prevent the problem. We must come to learn where the problem comes from. We must learn where disease originates so that we can learn how to prevent it. A woman came to me yesterday with an intestinal tumor, 5 centimeters, inoperable. We talked for about 40 minutes until she looked at me with tears in her eyes and says, "What do you think about the connection between the mind and the body?" And I looked back at her and I said, "More importantly, what do you think about it?" And she started to cry a little bit more and said, "You know, I grew up with a very abusive mother, a very dysfunctional, alcoholic, abusive mother. And I lived as an only child with that mother." And she cried a little bit more and she said, "You know, the man that I married was more abusive than my mother." And I said, "Do you understand why you married that man?" And she said, "I do now. I do now that I have cancer." Cancer is a messenger. Cancer is the ultimate teacher. So I said, "Did you learn your lesson? Did you listen to what cancer had to tell you?" She said, "Absolutely." And she said, "Furthermore, I've been waiting to have this conversation with somebody, and you're the first person that would have this conversation." And she said, "I've seen lots of doctors." And she said, "I even got angry at my doctors for treating me like a cancer." She looked back at them and said, "I am not my cancer," and walked out of the office. So she was thrilled to finally have this conversation. But she made it very clear that the energy of her disease had communicated to her, and as I say, the language of symptoms. The language of symptoms is a powerful language. It speaks to us all the time. Most of the time, folks are not used to listening to it. Even doctors are not used to listening to it. But she said, "You know, I know that I married my husband to resolve my conflict with my mother, to try to find a way to have power over something that had power over me." And I said, "You know, it all comes down to one thing. Disease is resistance. Healing is flow. There's only 2 energies in the entire universe, flow and resistance. Anytime you resist, you create disease. Anytime you flow, you break the energy of disease." So I said, "What do you think you resisted to create your disease?" And she said, "I'm not really sure." She said, "Maybe truth, maybe peace, maybe happiness. Maybe I didn't feel deserving of the happiness, the joy, or the flow of that happiness and joy that you speak of." And I said, "The bottom line of it is, we all have a way of resisting ourselves. We have a cultural way of living life that's resistant to the centrality of our own hearts. The heart is our nucleus. The way to the higher spirit is on the other side of the heart. You have to go through the heart. The higher spirit lives on the other side of the heart. But if you're not willing to go through the core of your own heart, you'll never get to your higher spirit. The unconscious mind develops very consistent patterns of belief and reality that we're going to talk about tonight. And disease is essentially set up in the corners of our unconscious mind. You have 2 major aspects to your mind. You have your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. And since the very beginning of your life, your unconscious mind has remembered virtually everything you've ever encountered. As I said to someone in my office the other day, if you got in your car right now and took a drive to Connecticut, every tree that you saw, every bird that you saw, every hill that you saw, every car, every license plate, every face, every building would be stored in your unconscious. Okay, so your cerebral cortex, your auditory and visual responses are basically cataloging every single iota of that information to be remembered for a lifetime. Unfortunately, Most of us in this culture see and think in very negative terms. So the unconscious that has such great power is programmed in negative terms, like the patient that we just spoke of. For her to have an early beginning with such difficulty, stress, and abusiveness, for her to be so powerfully impressioned with negative unconscious registerings as she did, creates a reality. Because reality in the mind is relative. Reality in the material world has boundaries, rules, laws, limitations. Reality in the human mind is limitless. There is no limit. For her, reality was abusive. For her, reality was hurt, shame, suffering, pain, stress, and difficulty. That was her predominant reality. A perfect environment, a fertile environment for what we call dis-ease. You can't separate disease from disease. I say when we resist ourselves by saying, I can't deal with my sadness, I can't deal with my anger, I can't deal with my fear. I'm overwhelmed dealing with those 3 negative emotions. I can't handle them anymore. Somebody give me a good stiff drink. And I don't mean canned water either. Give me a good stiff drink. Give me some drugs. Let me engage in some obsessive compulsive behavior, something to distract me from my pain and my suffering. Every time we engage at that level of distraction, we are saying no to our own hearts. I always tell my patients, I like to think of the Tai Chi circle, the yin-yang sign, as a lot of the kids call it, the dark side and the light side that make up one circle. That Taoist metaphor has helped my life more than any single thing. Because that circle suggests that there is darkness and there is light that must be understood as togetherness, what the Chinese call the mutual compatibility of opposition. That is togetherness. 2 complete diametric opposites creating wholeness. That's who we are. We are half God and we are half wounded child. God isn't out there, 30,000 feet at some cloud. God is in there. The universe isn't out there. The universe is in there. But because we're so contempted to separate that Tai Chi circle in our lives, the darkness I don't want any part of. I just want the happiness, the light, the positivity. That's all I want. That's like saying, I don't want half of me. I don't want half of my own heart. I reject half of my own heart. And then I expect not to be diseased? I expect not to be dis-eased? How can I do that? It's impossible. So until I realize that the God within me is fully ready, prepared, willing, and impatiently waiting to embrace the wounded child in me, until I embrace the fact that I have half darkness, half light, making up my one whole circle, I cannot have wholeness. Unconditional wholeness is the prerequisite for wellness. I see an entire culture that is conditionally disintegrated, unwhole, and unhealthy. Where do we disintegrate ourselves? Where do we separate from our wholeness? In our negative unconscious mind, our place of emotion. That's where it takes place. There are 3 negative emotions, as I said, fear, anger, and grief, that as a culture we have become systematically alienated from. This alienation from our negative emotions, or ourselves, if you will, is 80% responsible for all preventable death-related disease. All addiction, obsessive compulsion, they're all rooted here. The unconscious mind sequences too. In other words, my unconscious mind, my reality. I'm a reality maker, just like you are. From my mind to my brain to my nervous system to my body. From my mind to my brain to my nervous system to my body. Every day of my life, from the time I was born to today. The flow of sequence that creates reality goes from my mind and my thoughts to my brain, which carries out the orders of my thoughts, to my nervous system, which directs it to my physical body and creates my material reality. So everything flows from energy to matter. Everything flows from energy to matter. It's like the rippling effect of dropping a pebble in water. It begins at the subtle internal level and works its way out to the outer peripheral material levels. That's how the universe works. So when we think about the higher mind, everybody thinks it's like a Tony Robbins rerun. It's not. With all respect to Tony Robbins, he does wonderful work. But when we're talking spiritually, it's a different matter. There's greater depth. There's a greater sense of responsibility that each of us has to engage in. And it's with an understanding that the responsibility is towards self-love. Unconditional self-love. Stop looking for me. Look for you. Stop looking for other. Look for self. Stop putting God on clouds. Stop looking outside yourself for solutions, answers. They're inside of you. Everything is inside of you. That's why I say the first thing that happens when a patient comes to see me, I say, wait a minute. Let's get the patient bill of rights straight. You're the doctor, I'm the teacher. I'm not the doctor. If I tell you I'm the doctor, you're going to be sicker. If you awaken to the fact that you're the doctor, you've got a fighting chance. The responsibility is with you. And it begins with self-love. It begins with self-recognition. It begins with no longer disintegrating or separating yourself from yourself. Embracing your wholeness. The light side, the dark side, making up one whole you. Celebrate it. No need for shame. No need for shame. Shame's a lie. It's about integration. It's about wholeness. Wholeness is where wellness begins. Everybody wants to be well. Everybody that comes to see me, universally. Well, there's actually one woman that didn't. 20 years ago, I had a woman come into my office. I wrote about it in one of the new books. But about 20 years ago, this woman came into my office. And she came in with her son-in-law, her daughter, and her 2 grandchildren. And she walked up to the top of the stairs of their family, and they walked in the office, and everybody had a very dire look on their face. They looked absolutely panic-stricken. She had cancer. She was sent home to die. She was in her probably early 70s. So she came in the office, and her son-in-law, daughter-in-law, whatever they were, the family came in with her and the grandchildren, and they said, Ma, do you want us to come in the office with you? She said, no, I'll come by myself. It's okay, I'm okay. So she came in with me. The minute the door closed, she looked right up at me and she said, let's get one thing straight. I'm not going to do a thing you tell me. I said, okay. I'm all ears. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I can learn something from her that I can pass on to somebody else. Sure enough, she sat down and she said, look, I had the worst childhood of anybody you'll ever meet. She said, I had a horrible upbringing as an only child. And then she said, I was literally arranged to be wed. Arranged to be wed. So she said, the man that I married was somebody that I never really loved. It was an arrangement. And I basically followed directions. I never developed any kind of power. I never developed any kind of awareness of who I really was. My life, I'm giving up. And she said, cancer for me is a relief. You know what she called it? Her words. Cancer is a trap door that I can escape through to get off the stage of life. Those are her words. So I said, you're going to help me save a lot of lives. I said, before you leave, just know that even though we couldn't save your life, you saved a lot of lives. I've shared that story with so many people and inspired so many people not to die and became determined to live. That story has saved more people than that woman could ever believe. So the universe is always working to recycle. It's always working to renew. It's always working to promote wholeness, integratedness. And the egos that we have struggle because of our emotions. And once again, as I say, the heart is the key. So everybody wants to be healthy. They want to identify with their higher spirit, their higher self. How do I get into my higher self? Because I've watched so many people that are really elevated and ebullient in spirit. They're successful, they're happy, they travel, they seem to be economically solid. Things are really good for people who are really elevated in spirit. How do I get to that place? Okay, here we go. You want to go right through the core of your heart. Isn't there a shortcut? Isn't there a different way I can get there? And the answer is no. Because anybody who looks like they're successful, anybody who looks like they're really well adapted as far as higher spirit, emanating from their higher self, their core self, if they didn't pass through the core of the heart, then they still have to follow the same route that you have to follow. There's no other way. So my point is very simply this, that you have the ability to accept unconditionally the human being that you are, and to literally defy all the lies you've been told about who you are, and are still being told about who you are. So when you're ready to become a universe of one that's integrated with all others, when you're ready to take on your laws, your rules, your understanding that nobody's messing with this universe, nobody's messing with your understanding about your consolidation, your unconditional acceptance of who you are. When you're at that level, then you have open doors. The road and the path are wide open to your higher self, because it's just on the other side of your heart. But again, you have to be willing to go to that hard place. We handed out some of these sheets. Does everybody have these? Anybody need these? Okay, I think we have a couple folks down here that need some. Anybody else? Everybody have copies of these? Right there. All right, let's just look at the very first note that I made, a reality making. Your mind is a reality maker. It possesses the power to conceive and manifest from dream and vision to material reality, as we just pointed out. All your life's present realities, including your health, your relationships, your vocational fulfillment, were first established in your mind. Everything that you are, everything you do, everything you have become surrounded by, your entire existence was first set up in your mind. That's right, everything in life that you currently experience was first mapped out in your mind. The sequence of reality generating flows first from the mind to the brain and then to the physical body, material lifestyle. As we said, there are two reality makers. The first two important parts of the mind that I'd like to address are the conscious mind, which reflects our controlled thinking, makes up only 3% of our day-to-day thoughts. 3%. So again, those folks who say, this is the year I'm going to get my act together. I'm going to go on that special diet. I'm going to basically have this breakthrough year. All the stuff I've forever wanted to do, this is going to be the year that I do it. That's 3% of your mind power. That's why so many diets fail. The unconscious mind, which reflects our uncontrolled thinking, makes up 97% of our 1,000 to 3,000 thoughts per minute. Now, some say that we emit 300 to 1,000. Some say 1,000 to 3,000 thoughts per minute. But roughly 1,000 thoughts per minute is pretty average. But again, think of this. This reflects our uncontrolled thinking, which makes up 97% of our 1,000 to 3,000 thoughts. So 3,000 thoughts a minute, of which you're basically unaware of. I mean, these are unconscious thoughts. You're like aware of about 1% of them. Okay, and they're basically uncontrolled emotions, uncontrolled thinking. The conscious mind, the controlled thinking of our conscious mind, can process 2,000 bits of information per second. The controlled thinking of our conscious mind can process over 400 billion. So the unconscious mind, again, 400 billion bits of information per second, much of which is negative emotional thinking. So let's think about that for 1 second. My positive, day-to-day conscious mind is a muscle that puts forth 2,000 bits of information per second. Now that's pretty impressive, 2,000 bits per second. My unconscious negative emotional machine, my unconscious negative emotional machine produces 400 billion. 400 billion. So the objective as far as kind of maneuvering in mind is to understand that your conscious mind has the ability not to overpower your unconscious mind, certainly doesn't have that strength, but it does have the ability to manipulate it, to dictate to it, to manage it. So if the unconscious mind has all this great power, but the options are positive or negative, obviously you want to reinforce the positive, and there are ways of doing that we're going to talk about. Again, number 4, the unconscious mind, therefore many of us are randomly controlled by our unconscious negative thoughts. These negative unconscious thoughts that ultimately program our self-limiting thought patterns. When repeated thought patterns such as, I'm not safe enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not smart enough, become downloaded in our brain and they become imprinted in our nervous systems. Come on up here just for a second. So nervous system, raise up for me. Like we said, everything moves from your thoughts, from your words. Again, neuroscience tells us that your thoughts and your words produce matching chemistries. Matching chemistries. So he's going to give me a little deltoid strength, and he's going to give me good strength and resist, okay? It's a scapular muscle. It's about 30, 35 pounds of pressure. So if I say, close your eyes and make a fist, and don't let me put your arm down, and then I'm saying something to him like, for example, I don't know, let's say that there's an IRS guy outside that's going to talk to him. Okay. Raise up. Resist good strong. Now let's say that he has a refund check, okay? Now let's say that the refund check was given to the wrong person. All right, so we can actually fire up a lot of different positive and negative concepts here. So if we say something like 9/11, that happens. If you think about what happens, get a little bit more in depth in your mind and your thoughts, capturing the events as you remember them of 9/11, your nervous system gets very soft and jellyfish-like. You're not going anywhere. Raise it a little bit higher. Resist good and strong. Now imagine that you are able to help somebody in ways that you could never, ever have imagined. You really, really help somebody immeasurably, and they're so gratified, they're so appreciative of your wonderful help, and you've made such a difference in their lives. So again, thinking about positive thoughts like that versus negative thoughts, thank you. Thinking about positive versus negative thoughts, there's a flow pattern, like we said, that goes from our thoughts to our brain, and then they're relayed from our brain through our nervous system to our body. Muscles are just a medium for that, which is simply why I say that you can actually do all kinds of wonderful things with your biofeedback system. So if somebody wants to know, for example, whether they do well with, why don't you come on up here for a second? You know, we do it with foods. People wonder, how do you do this muscle testing stuff with foods? It's not complicated at all. If what we just talked about works, you know, the idea that your nervous system is responding and reacting neurologically off of the impressions, the images, and whatnot, your brain never shuts off. Like we always say, if you have a dream in the middle of the night that you're being chased by a dinosaur, it doesn't matter logically that there are no dinosaurs. You're still going to have an elevated heart rate, folks. Resist good and strong. So you never shut that part of your brain off. That part of your brain is protected, and it has to have a value placed on everything you say, a neurological value. So if I say, for example, the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, we don't know why the number 3 affects him like that, but he hates it whenever you say 3. All right, if I say the color red, orange, yellow. Now if I say yellow 3, he really hates that. Right? So these are arbitrary. So if I say then something like egg whites, egg yolks, if I say something like wheat, if I say something like egg whites, 1 ounce, 2 ounce, 3 ounce, what happens at 4 ounces? But if I say 3 ounces of egg whites, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Okay, so everybody is thinking. Everybody has limitations. Your nervous system talks to you all the time. That never stops happening. Like we said, it happens in the middle of the night. So your nervous system is speaking to you in the middle of your dreams. That's exactly why your dreams are so very important for you to understand what you're trying to say to yourself, because your nervous system never stops reacting. So that moves on to number 5, our biology of belief. That's exactly what we just demonstrated. Once downloaded into our brains and wired into our nervous systems, they then create a belief system that is biologically reinforced. What we just exhibited a minute ago is biological reinforcement of belief. Whatever thoughts we repeat the most, we are neurologically wired to believe in. Healthy or unhealthy, right or wrong, these neurologically reinforced thought patterns become our reality. So you constantly have, again, 3,000 thoughts, like we just set up above here. 3,000 thoughts. 3,000 thoughts per minute. I mean, that's a lot of thinking. You know, and that kind of thinking isn't qualified. Most people are randomly thinking negative stuff. They're kind of recalling negative emotions. And did you ever notice how you ruminate? Do you know what ruminating is? It's when you have the same negative stuff in your unconscious mind. It goes over and over and over and over. It never stops, and you get sick and tired of it and haunts the hell out of you. And you got to have a drink once in a while or go to bed, because you just have to shut it off. That's rumination. But again, you can reformat and reprogram rumination. You can uproot it and get it out. You don't have to continue to live with the haunting of your own rumination. Because, as it says in number 6 here, you can change your mind. In the material world, reality has boundaries. In the world of the human mind, reality is relative. There is no absolute truth, and there are no boundaries. Neuroscience has confirmed that in the human mind, reality is the result of whatever is repeated with the greatest frequency. What does your mind repeat with the greatest frequency? How does it feel? Are you content with this reality you've created? What would you like to change about it? How would you feel about your prospect for changing reality if I were to tell you that the average person uses approximately 10% of their available mind-changing power? 10% of your reformatting power. The average person engages in mind-changing reformatting at about 10%. There are two parts of the mind that represent the other 90%. Few have tapped into it. Many are becoming interested in doing so. Again, the metaconscious mind and the superconscious mind. And the metaconscious mind reflects higher-minded thinking. In other words, when I meditate, whenever I meditate or do Tai Chi or yoga, I'm engaging my metaconscious mind. However, when I'm in my meditation and I'm observing myself, the superconscious mind is the place from where that thinking comes. The place of origin, the source, the spirit, the soul, whatever you want to call it. The observer self, as they call it in quantum science. Quantum physics calls it the observer. So there are many different references for it. Whether they call it spirit, soul, observer, source, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has a center still point, a source. We tend to forget about it because you have this physical body that sometimes aches and pains and gets our attention. And sometimes we feel like we're just this personality in this body because they have such powerful, dominating presences. But that's not really who we are. That's not our core. That's not the observer self that we're talking about here. The core self, the source, is actually that superconscious mind. That superconscious mind. So the higher mind is the metaconscious mind. That's when I take the time to look at my higher self. I'm going to that place of greater wisdom, that metaconscious wisdom. And I'm stepping out of that mundane mind. I'm stepping out of my conscious mind that says, I want to lose weight. I'm stepping out of that unconscious mind that says, I feel incomplete. I feel hurt. I feel alone. I feel like I need something. And I'm stepping out of those two more commonly implemented minds. And I'm moving into a metaconscious mind that says, I want to meditate. I want to see something deeper in me. I want to think deeper thoughts. I want to make a deeper connection. I have a very powerful hunger for evolution, for transforming. My superconscious mind is the source of that higher thinking. It is actually the very source that is the essence of who we are. I just want to say a couple quick things about the way the mind works as far as disease and as far as wellness. There's something called placebo and something called nocebo. We talked about it before. I just want to talk about it really quickly again. There's a couple remarkable stories that I always like to share about the way the mind can actually go between heaven and hell. And that's really what nocebo and placebo are. So when you think about the heaven and hell aspect of the human mind, it is absolutely prolific. There's just a couple quick stories that I'm going to share from the biology of belief, if I may. My first one is actually one of my favorite stories. The Baylor School of Medicine study published in 2002 in the New England Journal of Medicine evaluated surgery for patients with severe, debilitating knee pain. The lead author of the story, Dr. Bruce Moseley, knew that knee surgery helped his patients. He's an orthopedic surgeon. All good surgeons know that there is no placebo effect in surgery. But Moseley was trying to figure out which part of the surgery was giving his patients relief. The patients in the study were divided into three groups. Moseley shaved the damaged cartilage in the knee of one group. That's all he did is shave the cartilage. For another group, he flushed out the knee, just basically flushed it with saline solution, removing material that thought to be inflammatory. Both these groups had standard treatment for arthritic, or representative of standard treatment for arthritic knees. The third group got fake surgery. They made an incision and they didn't do a thing. Okay, so they knocked him out, made an incision in their knee, sewed him back up, woke him up and said, there you go. All right, so there's your three groups. The patients were sedated. Moseley made 3 standard incisions and then talked and acted just as if he would have during real surgery. He even splashed salt water to stimulate the sound of the knee swishing procedure. After 40 minutes, Moseley sewed up the incision as if he'd done surgery. All 3 groups were prescribed the same post-operative care, which included an exercise program. Now here's a really amazing thing. Afterwards, it was noted that there was a local television crew that filmed all 3 surgical groups at the very beginning and through their surgeries and their processes and at the end again. What they found is that all three groups had exactly the same recovery response. They all had a 56 or 57% recovery factor. All groups, the ones that really got the surgery, the ones that got fake surgery, and the ones that just had a saline flush. They all had about 56.5% success rate, healing rate. So then the television crew came in and said, this is really fascinating what they did. They filmed them as they were entered in, and then after it was all done, they interviewed the patients. And to imagine them interviewing patients that got fake surgery that didn't know it because they weren't told until 2 years later, and the film crew has them on film saying, while they were playing tennis, while they're playing basketball, I haven't been able to do this for 10 years. I've never felt better. That is incredible. That's miraculous surgery. And then 2 years later, they found out that they never even got surgery. Oh well. The power of the mind. Does your mind change your chemistry? Does it produce endorphins? Does it produce healing agents? Do you know what endorphin means? Endorphin means brain morphine. It means brain morphine. Your brain produces morphine 25,000 times more powerful than what pharmaceutical morphine is. 25,000. You heard stories about soldiers who take a bullet and they keep doing whatever they're doing to save their entire group, and then afterwards go, oh, geez, I'm bleeding. Okay? Those are classic war stories. Because you produce morphine here that is 25,000 times stronger than anything Lilly, Pfizer, or Merck produce. So the power of the chemistry, you're on drugs. You're always on drugs. The power of the pharmaceutical chemistry in your brain is unbelievable. And what that story depicts to me is the endorphin-based healing power of the chemistry in the brain. And that is a classic placebo effect. But it works the other way as well. There's a classic story about the Roman Catholic Hospital in Washington, D.C. that's told over and over and over again about a gentleman who was in his late 60s, and he was fully recovered, and he was ready to be sent home, and the doctors had cleared him. They gave him his physical and said, you're in good shape, tomorrow morning you're going home. And that night, in the middle of the night, 2:30 in the morning, a priest came in, gave the wrong patient last rites. The patient that received the last rites was a 68-year-old gentleman who was cleared to send home the next day. He died that night. So that's called nocebo, which basically means I shall do harm. It's Latin for I shall harm. Placebo is I shall please. So we both have the I shall please and the I shall do harm factor in our own brains with the power of great, great pharmaceutical force. So do you have the power to save your life? Do you have the power to take your life? You do it every day. You get an inch closer to one side of the dial or the other. So you're either conscious or unconscious, but you're always either moving in the direction of healing or disease. You take one step, unwittingly perhaps, but you take one step toward healing or one step toward disease through every thought that you admit and every day of your life. So the bigger point of the matter is you should be conscious about which direction you're headed in. But you make that movement every day. One side to the right, one side to the left. The placebo and nocebo power of the mind are very clear about the power of our mind to heal or create disease. You do it every single day. We're going to take a very short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about exactly how you can reformat and reprogram. We're going to take you also through a meditation this evening. We have the meditation that we're selling tonight. I just finished recording it, the Higher Mind meditation tape over there. We're going to actually take you through it in a little while. And my son Nick is actually going to play the Tibetan bowls while we do it. So it's a remarkable meditation. We have a copy of it here, and we're going to actually take you through it live this evening. So anyway, we'll see you in just a few minutes. All right, we'll get started again here for the second part. All right, thanks to all the vendors. I mean, there's a lot of really wonderful products there that are really supportive of everybody's well-being. So it's great to have everybody here as kind of one team. So my thanks to all those folks. We talked a lot about the emotional aspect of this work. We're going to kind of keep touching on the journey to the higher self. You know, everybody wants to find out how to get to that higher mind. There's a very real place. This is not an imaginary place. This isn't Mr. Rogers' Land of Wonder here. You know, we're talking about a very real place inside your mind that you have the ability to access and emanate from consistently. That's the key. So again, you know, it's like the meditation that we're going to go through in a little while here shows you where in your mind that is. You're going to see that place in yourself. And then you're going to move into it and move from that place. So again, like we said, meditation is an exercise and a discipline that shows you that higher self. It shows you your observer, your spirit, your soul, whatever you want to call it, your source, as I like to say. But then you can actually literally gravitate your energy, the energy of your consciousness, your intention, into that place, into that observer, and literally meld with it so that you're coming from that place. You know, there's a difference between seeing your higher self in your meditation versus unifying with it and practicing the whole concept of not letting go. Once you go into that place, you can stay there. Once you go into that place of higher self, once you observe it, see it, and then move into it, you can choose to emanate from that place, to come from your source. For the most part, what we do is we spend most of our time not thinking about our source, but focusing on our personality, our stresses, what I call the external realities of other, as opposed to the internal realities of self. We tend to be very other-directed. We tend to be very self-distracted. So as we emanate from other, and we station ourselves in the various domains of out there, otherness, we are separating ourselves from that internal place that is our source. And to me, you know, I don't really do well with these far-out concepts about God. But I have a really easy time understanding that God is a consciousness within the context of universal source that everybody has access to. But the real challenge of life is to be less distracted by what's going on around you long enough to contemplate what's in you and ultimately to emanate from it. The great distraction that keeps us from doing that very thing is our resistance to our own heart. We talked about it earlier. And as I said to someone during the break, we are amazingly adept at physical exercise, at mental exercise. We even spiritually exercise for an hour a week on Sunday. We do zero emotional exercising. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. So when we talk about we want to be holistic, we celebrate the notion of holism. Everybody does. Everybody that's here has a familiarity with it and appreciation of it. Holism. But we exclude holism by isolating our consciousness away from the negative unconscious emotions that we all harbor. They are just as much a precious part of self. In fact, perhaps more central to the issue of our own liberation. That's the part that if we master embracing, we master our own liberation. That's where the peace is. It's really easy to contemplate just meditating, just observing a higher place in us. Isn't that great? But people meditate for a lifetime. And then they basically only gravitate and evolve so far. But again, my point is it's a three-part process. Number one, part one, know what is in your heart and stop avoiding it. Celebrate it, embrace it, go to that place. Embrace the holism of your Tai Chi circle. Your dark side and your light side are equal parts. Forget the bias that your culture has laid on you that says, we don't like being around people who are negative. This isn't about being negative. In fact, I said to somebody in the office this week, the very interesting part of this paradox is when she said, I don't know, the thought of going there, it sounds painful. It sounds like it's all dark and painful in there. I don't want to go there. And I said, wait a minute. Here's the deal. The Buddhists awaken us to the reality that there is no such thing as the duality of pleasure versus pain. That's a lie. It's not about pleasure versus pain. That is a very elusive, untrue reality. That's not a real duality. Pleasure versus pain is false. The real duality is short-term pain, long-term suffering. If you're willing to move through the short-term pain, you will liberate yourself from your long-term suffering. That is universal reality. That's the essence of disease versus healing, right there. Flow versus resistance. If I resist flowing into my painful, dark, hurtful places, then I'm resisting my own self. And if I resist my own self, I'll never have any access to ending and liberating myself from my long suffering. The ultimate healing is to liberate yourself from long suffering. And the only way to do that is to move into your heart with an open embrace and a willingness to take a risk that is the consummate leap of faith. Now, if you're like me, you'll choose your quietest moments, your privatest times, your most private times, and you'll set yourself up. I say, well, what do you do for exercise physically? What do people do for exercise physically to prepare? They join a gym. They buy all the right clothing. They make sure they have good sneakers. They're getting all set up. They pick a time during the day. They're consistent at showing up at that time. I got to go to the gym now. I got to stop what I'm doing. It's time to go to... That's devotion. And that's setting up the environment. When you want to exercise your mind, you apply to colleges. You apply to advanced learning programs, adult ed programs. When you want to exercise your spirit, you engage in this very specific 1 hour period from 10 to 11 on a Sunday with the family. Or you have a specific way to meditate, or a specific book that you like to read, or books that you like, or spiritual disciplines that you embrace. Tai Chi, yoga, whatever it might be. You are ceremonial about the whole process of exercising all of your being except your emotions. When it comes to your emotions, everything stops. Everything stops. To be ceremonial about that would mean, to me, to find music that opens up my heart chakra. That's easy to do. Everybody knows that there's specific songs that will just open your heart chakra right up. Pick those songs out. Find them. Put them on an iPod. Record them. Find a way to access that music. What about those pictures? What about those remarkable, remarkable pictures of your childhood? What about the memorabilia? The wonderful gifts that somebody gave you, of somebody that you love and miss. That's real life. Why do we hide from that? Why do we avoid it? As I say, when somebody exudes a positive emotion, it's a fist pump. When it's a negative emotion, it's, oh, no, I'm okay. Leave me alone. I'm okay. It's barely an instant. There's no balance there. And where there's no balance, there's no harmony. There's no harmony, there's no wellness. And that's why the culture is the way it is. Dis-ease prevails. So to exercise the heart, create an environment. Create the same exercising environment that you would for your body and your mind and your spirit. To move into the world of your heart ceremoniously, lovingly, embracingly. And you'll shock yourself. Because back to what the Buddhists teach us about facing your short-term pain and overcoming and liberating yourself from your long-term suffering is amazing. The tension snaps like that. Things you were afraid of a whole lifetime no longer have any power. There's a great Buddhist story about two monks that are walking through the woods together. And as the monks are walking and talking, like the Buddhists say, when walking, just walk. When talking, just talk. And that's what they're doing. They're just walking and talking and walking and talking and walking and talking. And a demon came out from behind the trees and roared. And one of the monks looked up, and in his fear he ran. And the other monk just kept walking and talking and walking and talking and walking and talking. And the demon roared again.
And he just kept walking and talking and walking and talking. The demon said, "You are a boar." And he went and chased the one and ran. And that is the story of all of our lives. The demon is your fear. The demon is your repression. The demon is your resistance to your own heart. And it will chase you and chase you and chase you all the days of your life. And it will be the source, the nucleus of all your dis-ease. And the liberation comes by you occupying yourself within your true self. Filling up yourself. Filling yourself full with yourself. You can't get fulfilled because you can't get filled full enough on alcohol, on sugar and chocolate, or people, or wishes, hopes, and dreams. All the illusions only fill you so far, and then you got to keep hitting the octane. You keep heading to the pumps over and over. So it's when you fill yourself up and fill yourself full that you're walking and talking and walking and talking, because you're emanating from within yourself. You're internally proactive. You're not externally reactive. We've been programmed to be victims. External reactive, externally reactive, externally reactive, externally reactive. What's going to chase me next is more like our typical dialogue. The objective is to understand that that is a negatively programmed unconscious reality. A negatively programmed unconscious reality. It's a choice. When I ask people, "How are you doing?" "Oh, not good. Things are really rough today." And I think to myself, what kind of pictures are you painting? What kind of stories are you writing? You are the author of your novel. I don't want to read your novel. You don't either, but you don't know it, and I'm about to break you the news. Number 8 in your program sheet, erase and replace. When your novel is negative and your stories are hurting you, stop writing them. Erase them. It is equally important to operate with the same higher intention during our waking moments. Our options are to be led by our unconsciously negative or consciously positive mind. Think about that right there. Stop right there. Remember what I just said here. Highlight that in red. Our options are to be led by our unconsciously negative or consciously positive mind. You're operating constantly up there, as we said. 1,000 to 3,000 thoughts a minute. You're always firing. You're either inadvertently being controlled by your own negative memories, or you're consciously stopping that. But you're always firing thoughts. So it is essential that we strive to live mindfully from moment to moment, observing and editing our thoughts. I encourage what I call erasing and replacing. By erasing our negative thought patterns and replacing them with positive, we are aligning our positive mind in front of our negative. Suzanne mentioned that we worked together for a while down in Acushnet, down at Titleist Golf. And we started off doing nutrition work, and then things went so exceptionally well with everybody changing their diets. All the executives, all the factory people, the whole place was carrying their diet sheets around and eating well in the cafeteria, and everybody was in a state of shock. They didn't think that this entire culture would shift. But the whole culture shifted. And they loved feeling great and having the power to do it. Great stuff. So I then said, I got a great idea. How about if we do the same blood tests before we start them on this next program that we did on the nutrition program? In other words, before we did a nutrition program, so let's check your cholesterol, your triglycerides, and all that kind of stuff. Let's do the same thing. And this time, instead of doing nutrition work, we'll do positive thinking for 16 weeks and see what happens to their cholesterol and their triglycerides. You think anything different happened? It didn't. People's physical bodies change when their thoughts change. When I first brought it up, they thought I was nuts. And then they said, "We got a place we're going to send you." One of the custom, where custom was? They said, "We're sending you over to custom. These people do nothing but complain, 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 complain. We don't even dare go over there half the time." Management was afraid of it because there were a bunch of gals that said, "Don't get in my way." Constantly beefing and moaning and complaining with a vengeance, with a force that intimidated management. They said, "This is like sending you as a missionary to try to break the mood." I said, "No problem, we'll go over there." I had these people completely transformed. Because I had them believing in themselves. First thing I said is, all right, what I want everybody to do, lesson number one, I want you to be completely conscious of all your negative dialogue and all the negative dialogue that takes place around you. So if you go home from work tonight, start thinking. I put the seed in their mind. Start thinking that you're tuning in, consciously listening to and fishing for negative comments, negative thought patterns. I want you to start paying attention. Next week, I'm going to ask you about it. I said, they all came in the next week, and I said, how many people paid, hands are up before I even asked? How many people? Everybody, the whole room. And they're all chuckling. And I said, how many people were shocked at how much negative dialogue takes place around them that they weren't paying attention to before? Everybody's hand was up. Conscious, mindful living. Choice, the power of choice. The power of a mind, the limitless power of a mind. Engaging this wonderful machine in a very useful and very healing and a very self-empowered way. Redirecting the power of the mind. Believing you can do it, exercising it, proving to yourself that new things can happen, exciting yourself that you can engage in new things that make big differences. So these people over 16 weeks had a miraculous turnaround. I saved all the statistical data, questionnaires, and all that stuff. But at the end of the program, the entire group of the toughest of the tough were 81% less depressed, 96% less anxious, 85% more self-empowered, etc., etc., etc. Because one of the major things we did is say, folks, erase and replace. When you have negative stuff going on, pay attention, freeze it, erase it, and replace it with a different phrase. I said, imagine you go home at night and your husband, your wife says, oh man, this weather is pathetic, I hate, this weather is, let's move to another part of the country. I said, you know what, forget all that stuff. When your husband or wife says that, you don't have to argue with them, don't have to fight with them, don't have to leave the room. In your mind, you got a trip going on that they can't understand. You got an eraser up there. You just erase. And the lines that I heard from people were hilarious, because I got feedback, questionnaires back from them. They said, I am having the best time erasing my husband. And they say that in the past, he'd get me really angry, we'd start a fight. And now he thinks I'm crazy because I'm laughing all the time because he doesn't know that I'm erasing him. So they got real stuff going on in their head. They're having a blast, So erase the negative, replace it with positive. Number 9, higher and lower spirit. Everything in our world is inescapably dualistic. Everything, including our own mind. Our highest mind reflects our immortal divine self. Our lowest mind reflects our mortal human self. There is an omnipotent God, a wounded child living within every one of us. That's what I said. We have a higher and a lower self to the nth degree. There's no escaping the fact that we are destined to learn how to integrate and unify our own two extremes. The only question is, in what spirit do your two spirits coexist? That's key. I'll say it again. In what spirit do your two spirits coexist? Okay? Be aware of the fact that you have two spirits that are coexisting. How are they coexisting? Okay? Are you divorced from your other self? Is one self, your personality self, your lower self, your mundane, negative, unconscious self, completely tied off and separate? It's all a matter of, like I said earlier, your mind has to go into your heart. Exercise it, like I said earlier. Start exercising your heart with your mind. Take that 10:30 quiet zone at the end of the night. Have that wonderful, sensitive music. Start looking through some of that memorabilia. Start, triggering some of that emotion. Your heart's loaded with stuff. It's loaded with stuff. The amount of energy in the average human heart could literally power New York City for a year in one heart. And it just goes on another day of stuffed repression to create another problem and another disease and another psychosomatic frustration. That's crazy. I've seen enough of that for a lifetime, literally. So, there's only so many times I can sit in front of somebody and say, well, there is this supplement you can take. Now, supplements are important for stress. Nutrition is important, again, because I always say addition through subtraction is as important as anything here. If I'm eating a lot of, like the woman I talked about one of the last times we did a talk here, woman came into the old offices down Route 3A probably a year, 2 years, 2-3 years ago, I guess it was, in June, July, somewhere in the summer. And she was on several antidepressants. And she was really about, she cried the whole visit. And I did some muscle testing, and I found out that she had an allergy to wheat that wasn't just a physical allergy, not a body allergy, a cerebral allergy, a brain inflammation from gluten. So I said, look, addition through subtraction. Before we think the right thoughts, before we can really make progress with your reformatting, let's at least improve your prospects cellularly here. Let's clear the decks so you can get something done. So I said, get off the wheat. I said, you don't look like you have a lot of other problems going on here, physically or digestive. Nutrition looked good. Wheat's horrible. On a scale of -1 to 10, it was a -10. Brain inflammation, -10, get off the wheat. She got off the wheat, didn't hear from her for months. Months later, she called me and said, I just want you to know I'm back to work, I'm off all medicines, and they can't figure out why I'm not depressed anymore. So is food capable of, food is a drug. Food is a drug. Drugs save lives, drugs take lives. Make sure you know what drugs you're taking when you eat and how they affect your brain, your chemistry, and your body. Don't let anybody kid you. Food is a drug. And the more chemicalized and the more modified it gets, the more drugged it gets. So it's really important to start there. Make sure your body's in good shape. Take care of yourself. When I say, the last things I say to every patient who leaves my office, take care of yourself. I really mean that. I'm just saying, hey, see you later. I'm not giving you one of those. I'm not giving you the bum's rush. I mean, take care of yourself. Care for yourself. Love yourself. Get occupied from your own heart. Start from your heart and fill the rest of you up. And then share that. You wouldn't want to live another day otherwise if you were doing that. Once you occupy that place and live that way, you say, what did I wait so long for? What the heck was I waiting for? Don't wait. You're not here forever. You've already missed an awful lot of opportunities. I always tell people, you don't live by the calendar year. You don't live by the hour or by the minute. You live by the heartbeat. You live by the heartbeat. Every heartbeat is a lifetime. Don't miss another lifetime. We do list here a number of natural medicines that may help with mind, depression, mood swings, anxiety, self-esteem issues. Again, nutrition's 101 here, like we always say with the body. There's a number of agents here. Bach flower remedies, large holly, and again, they're over there. And those are extremely useful. Those are medicines that really work on the subtlest part of you. They're not knock-down, drag-out drugs. These are very powerful, yet paradoxically subtle, natural medicines that are from the earth that Dr. Edward Bach researched and developed many, many years ago. And they are absolutely really wonderful, special. And I handpicked the best stress medicines, and I muscle tested and picked them out. And suggest 3 drops of anything above 3 ounces of water 3 times a day. So Corey, I know Corey knows what those are for. If anybody's interested when we're done, you can check in with those over there. Also, homeopathics, Ignatia 30C, Fossil C. These are things that I use for folks for natural alternatives for depressions, anxieties. Again, if you want to make the brain reformatting changes that we're going to make in just a minute with meditation and with some of the positive thinking that you're really going to espouse to, make sure the body is supportive, like I said, biochemically first. So Ignatia is really great for especially emotions that are out of control. Go into that heart, that if that heart feels like it's overwhelming, Ignatia and Fossil Sedum are wonderful, wonderful homeopathics to help take some of the edge off the power of which you've been holding on to that may be intimidating for you. Also, Nat Sulf, Lycopodium, Gelsemium. Those 30C potencies are mind and body potencies. They're going to work more with mind and body simultaneously. And again, the dose, 3 pellets under the tongue, 3 times per day for a month or so. And for herbs, I know Dave's got some of those over there too. Passion flower. We're talking about Tulsi, valerian root, St. John's wort. Those would be my choices there. And food supplements, Gyrotheanine, 200 milligrams, Gyro-DMAE. Theanine is really good if you have anxiety and you want to kind of tone down some of the intensity of that anxiety. Gyro-DMAE is just a wonderful dimethylaminoethanol. It's a wonderful positive enhancing agent that really enhances positive thinking and really clarifies things like memory, cognitive recall, and cognitive responsiveness. It really sharpens your brain, and it really upbeats your mood. Spirulina, again, really amazing, amazing studies that indicate that it increases PEAs, phenylethylamines, which are feel-good. We produce PEAs whenever we first fall in love. We produce PEAs whenever we're really in a very up, high mood. We only tend to do that every once in a while, obviously. But spirulina has a high concentration of these phenylethylamines, or PEAs. It also, when you think about negative hormones in the body, negative thinking patterns, negative neurochemistries, triggered by monoamines that are what are called monoamine Bs. They're enzymes. But PEAs, the phenylethylamines, antagonize those. They're upbeat chemistries that neutralize and antagonize the downbeaters. So that's really good. DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, the good stuff in fish oil that gives you a positive mood as well, enhances learning, very much like DMAE. The two of those work great together. And 5-hydroxytryptophan, HTP, which is again a form of tryptophan that's actually a converted form of tryptophan that is really just a positive serotonin reuptake support. It's a natural serotonin support. I mentioned foods and spices that really have high amounts of folic acid, again, etc. Positive mood foods, spinach, garlic, chili peppers, cayenne pepper, turmeric, cumin, onions. These are very high in antioxidants, obviously, and they're very high in a lot of the feel-good neurotransmitters. Additional strategies. We talked about cranial electrical stimulation, meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, hypnosis. We've talked a lot about the work that Nick does in our office on Wednesdays with CES, or cranial electrical stimulation. It's an amazing process. I urge everybody to study up on it, to read about more about it. We have the unit that is the first portable battery-operated unit ever developed. In the past, they'd have these huge wave generators that are like the size of a refrigerator. And then they distilled them down to something that's the size of a large bread box, and now we've got this little unit that's handheld and battery-operated. But these are wave generators. They produce brain waves, they produce a drive wave, and they produce a frequency. In other words, they produce a frequency that is essentially a meditation kind of a deep relaxation frequency. So you could be stressed out of your mind. You could be pulling in the door from the Southeast Expressway. Well, maybe not. No, I'm just kidding. You could pull in from the Southeast Expressway, yes, and you could be really highly stressed, and let him strap you up. And within a matter of minutes, this actually has a drive signal that actually goes in and reformats your brainwave. Now, the amazing thing about it is, Chip Fisher, who is a friend of ours who was down in Manhattan, and is the CEO of the company, they've done extensive research, but they did this amazing project from the Drug Rehab Center in Manhattan. And the Drug Rehab Center in Manhattan had a 6% sustenance rate. In other words, 94% of those people who were doing drug rehab, after 2 weeks, 94% were gone, out of the building. See you later, back on the streets. He went down there for a 16-week experiment, hooked them up gratis to these CES units like we have, and it was cut in half. So 56% of those people sustained beyond the 2-week program into extended periods of time. So we have learned a great deal from the research that suggests that it's a cumulative. That's what's remarkable about it. You don't have to keep doing it. You do a series of those reprogrammings, and your brain literally then gets retrained. It gets reformatted. And of course, the first thought is, well, when does it go back the other way? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. You can literally lock it into a new wave pattern, which makes it just as hard to get out of that positive wave pattern as it is for you to get out of your negative one. So why is it not more difficult for you to question how you get locked into your negative pattern and say, how long is this negative pattern going to last? Well, the negative pattern is no more powerful than the positive potential. So if you reformat, your positive pattern can be just as stubborn, and wouldn't that be nice? And that's what CES is really about. So do your research on that, and you can come in and talk to him, or actually at the end of the program, if you want to talk to Nick about it, he'll give you some updated information about that. All right, I'm going to just take 1 to 2 minutes of questions, then we're going to do this incredible meditation. Nick is going to play the Tibetan bowls up there, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful meditation. Any questions about anything we've talked about tonight? Anybody? All right, you're going to be quizzed in 5 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody knows everything we talked about. Yes?
Quick question. At the beginning, you said all addiction is rooted in...
All addiction is rooted in the obsessive compulsion of self-denial. So in other words, if I have hurt in my heart, my metaphor for me denying and repressing that is that I keep getting tapped on my own shoulder. and I want to busy myself as much as I can with some obsessive compulsion, some dynamic, powerful thing. Notice how people don't get addicted to oatmeal. There's no dynamism there. People get addicted to things like alcohol and caffeine. They get addicted to people. They get addicted to intense stuff, compelling energy, because the person tapping me on the shoulder is me, and I got to ignore that, and I can't ignore that, so I got to be drawn to something very distracting, very powerful, very dynamic. So obsessive compulsion addiction is the end product of me ignoring me. And thank God that I won't let myself go. I keep trying, I keep trying, I keep trying. Anybody else?
I just had a question on the Bach flower remedy.
Yes.
Is it necessary to muscle test for those, or could you just...
No, I mean, is it necessary to test for the Bach flower remedies is the question. No, I don't think it is. I think that you need to trust your own instincts. I mean, muscle testing is a nice convenience, and it certainly is reliable as far as I feel about that. And it's a great way to go, but if you have a good instinct about it, you want to read the books, look at the manuals, or look at the short literatures on it in a health food store or whatnot, and pick up on them and try them, by all means, I just do that. They're safe to do that with. Anybody else? Yes?
You had said there's 3 parts to something about your heart. Know
3 emotions.
Know what's in your heart and create an environment. And I think I missed the 3rd.
Yeah, and then go there.
Oh.
Go there. So yes, no, it's good. It's a great question. It's an important question. It's the key to what we're talking about. In other words, it's like the 2 things we're talking about tonight. Really, you think about the higher mind. Everybody wants to get there, but again, the message that I said earlier is you cannot pave a superhighway over an active volcano. I'm going to say that again. Everybody wants to get on the superhighway of life, but you cannot pave your superhighway over your active volcano. You need to get into the volcano and diffuse it, make it safe to build a highway over, then you build your superhighway. Go to your heart first and embrace what's in there. Let it out and keep breathing it out and breathing it in. Again, take that quantum leap, that risk. Embrace it. Tell yourself it's not a hard place to visit. Reformat your thoughts about your own heart, about what's in there. Become brave. I said to somebody the other day, imagine somebody who's in the front of the 4th of July parade. They're walking down the middle of Main Street, leading the parade, and suddenly they look over at a spot where their dear old dad used to take them for 30 years to go to the 4th of July parade. Dad died recently. In the middle of the whole town, he looks over at that spot and he starts to cry like a baby in front of the whole town in the middle of the 4th of July parade. Is he stronger or is he weaker? We all know the answer. So we need to reformat and reassociate what strength is, what power is, what force is. Force is unnatural. Force is resistance. It keeps you from being whole. Flow is power. And when I don't block my flow, my natural flow, that's when I'm at my most powerful level. We'll take one other question and we're going to do the meditation. Anybody else? Yes?
So when you're going through these things that could be extremely painful, that's good.
Remember what we said earlier, keep in mind the Buddhist situation that we talked about. Dealing with your short-term, embracing your short-term pain is what allows you to end and liberate from your long-term suffering. The objective is to get out of the pattern of long suffering, because that's where disease is born. That was my first statement. Okay, everybody got that one? Anybody else? Take one last one? No? Okay. Nick, let's get you in position. Where's Nick? He's already up there. There he is. All right, way ahead of me. That's what happens when you get older. They get ahead of you quick. All right. Everybody turn around, get comfortable. I want you to just get as cozy as you can. This is going to be a short version of this. And again, what we explained earlier is on that CD over there. We just recorded tonight's presentation over there. And the meditation that we're doing now has been recorded, and it's on there too. So it's in the same sequence. If you purchase that CD, you get the same general talk that I gave tonight, plus you get the same meditation we're about to do right now. So again, get really comfortable. Please turn off all cell phones if anybody hasn't already. Close your eyes. Let's everybody just take a deep breath, slow deep breath, and just release through the mouth. Let's take one more deep breath. And release through the mouth, that's it. Okay, completely relax. This process involves deeply relaxing for a short period of time, during which time I'm going to take you on a journey deep into the transformational centers of your own mind. When you do this at home, it's best to be lying down or sitting, anywhere where you can be comfortable, and ignore the outside world. Now find yourself to be completely comfortable and at ease. I'd like you to pay attention to your breathing. Just observe your breathing. Just let go and observe the perfectly natural way that your breath gently moves in and out. Allow yourself to relax even more deeply. In your mind only, begin counting backwards from 200, 199, 198, 197. That's good. Keep counting backwards in your mind with no concern if you lose your place. Now I'd like you to notice one place in your body that feels the most deeply relaxed. I'd like you to direct that deep relaxation from that specific place in your body to your total being, like a warm wave being directed from your head to toe, covering yourself with the blanket of that total relaxation and comfort. Ease your body and your mind completely. Relax all your muscles and let your shoulders drop as you relax completely. Now that you're more fully relaxed, I want you to envision in your mind that you can take a journey into the innermost center of your being. As if your thoughts could travel slowly from your brain downward to a place right behind and far beyond the center of your own heart. Imagine that slowly a steady stream of your thoughts is being directed to a place deep within you that transcends all time and space. A manifestation of you that has lived forever. Imagine that you have at long last arrived at the center of your true eternal self. A place of peace. A place of your soul. It need not take on any shape or form. Simply see it as a beam of beautiful, brightly colored, glowing light. Picture any color you wish. Now, as you observe that eternal energy field that represents your highest self, I want you to envision yourself moving into the shower of its radiant, warm light. Take a few let the magnificent power of its light draw you in, embrace you, and heal you. Now feel yourself becoming one with that light. No longer are you simply observing your soul. Now you are blended and unified and coming from your soul. Now you are your soul. Now just simply flow from your eternal self. Flow from your source. Emanate from your source. Flow as the beam of warm, radiant, eternal light that you are. Just flow. As you flow, know that each time you come to this place, you become more integrated with your higher self. You become your highest self. This light that you truly are has always flowed, and it will flow for an eternity. Each time you bring your attention to this light that you are, you'll become more unified with its limitless power. Your highest self has no limits. When you emanate from the light of your highest self, you become part of a unified field where everything is whole, interconnected, and at peace. Here, you are completely and fully at peace. This is your place of miracles. Come to know your true self until you become your true self. The real true self that you are is eternal. The real true self that you are has forever, unconditionally observed and loved all of your humanness. The eternal sacred observer that is you reflects only pure love and endless light. This higher domain of pure love, wisdom, and endless light no longer belongs to the concept of other. This is the true place from which you emanate. This is your source. You are your source. Continue to flow from the light of your source. When you flow from your source, you and creation become one. Here, all your dreams and visions of joy and ecstasy are part of an undying reality that always awaits you. Here is where you can create your bliss. Flow from your source now and become the sorcerer that manifests your resplendent reality. Reauthor the story of your precious life from this magical place deep within your higher mind. Stretch the horizons of your life to far beyond infinity. Invite yourself to reach beyond the grasp of your mortal mind now. Become the miracle that makes your miracles happen. Know that right now you are your highest self. I want you to affirm that thought right now by repeating with me silently in your mind. I am my highest self, and I live from my highest self. Continue to repeat silently within your own mind only. I am my highest self, and I live from my highest self. I am my highest self, and I live from my highest self. I am my highest self, and I live from my highest self. Know that right now you are your highest self. Now, in just a few moments, I'll ask you in your mind to count down from 10 to 1. And in a few moments, you'll open your eyes and feel relaxed, but refreshed, with a clearer understanding of who you truly are. And what you have just seen and where you now come from will only become enriched and reinforced as it helps transform you into your higher being. And each time you visit, it'll become stronger and stronger. Now in your mind, begin counting down slowly from 10, 9, 8, 7. With each number you come back just a little more slowly to a fully refreshed consciousness. 6, 5, that's it. 4, start to feel yourself in your body a little bit. 3, slowly awakening. 2, and 1. And now I'd like you to begin feeling your hands and your feet. And very slowly and gradually awaken yourself, and slowly and gradually open your eyes. Awaken to the joy of knowing just how beautiful your highest self is and just how whole you truly are. Wonderful job. All right, once again, we'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight, and I'd like you to kind of, take this experience at the energy level, not just the spoken level. It's not just the words we shared tonight. It's not just the thoughts we shared, it's the energy we exchanged. We came full circle. We began this evening with energy, and we came fully back to the same very energy. Unified, whole. So, again, keep in mind that those CDs are over there, and you can recapture this experience if you wish. If not, just again, my urging is that you work at 2 levels Level A is to go into the heart, to create that environment, to embrace your own heart, to exercise your heart, your emotional heart. Let it speak in whatever language it wants, however loud, however forceful. Just observe it. Observe your emotional heart with your spirit. Just stand there by its side supportively and just be there to embrace the language of your heart. And again, when you recover from that experience, you've released all that volcanic energy, then you start to build your superhighway. It's a two-part process. You exercise your heart first, then your higher mind and your highest mind. Thank you very much. Thanks for being a wonderful cadet bowler as well.